Hello, welcome to News Now on TV360. I am Thelma Okoro. Annual inflation in Nigeria accelerated to 17.6% in August from 17.1% in July this year. The Statistics Office on Friday said that food inflation also rose to 16.4% in August from 15.8% in July. The major deficiencies responsible for accelerating the pace of the increase in the headline index were housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuel, as well as education and transportation services. Nigeria has seen its economy slide into recession for the first time in more than 20 years, largely due to the impact of low oil prices, which account for around 70% of government revenue. These problems have been worsened by a spate of attacks on oil pipelines in the Niger Delta region since the start of 2016. Analysts, however, predict inflation is expected to slow down by this time next year. The Nigerian government has revealed plans to inject the sum of 350 billion naira into the country's economy. Speaking to newsmen in Abuja, the nation's capital, Kemi Adeosun, Nigeria's finance minister, said the additional funding on top of the initial 420 billion naira released in May this year is primarily for capital expenditure that would also involve support from local banks and transaction partners. She also noted that the country's plans to borrow a total of 1.8 trillion naira from home and abroad was still in progress.
We're releasing, as I said, another 350 billion. The focus is going to be similar. It will be the same large ministries. However, there will also be funding of about 60 billion to the social intervention program. And that's very important in terms of putting money into people's pocket. Those are the programs that will release cash back, the 5,000 naira to some of the most poor and vulnerable, the homeschool feeding program, which is very, very important. That will also generate some economic activity in a lot of our local governments with women and maybe even men cooking for the children. And then the NPower, which is the teacher corps, that's the graduates that will be going into the primary schools as teaching assistants. So they'll begin to get salaries or stipends, I think they're called, from the end of the month. So we've cashed back those programs as well as part of, or we'll be cash backing those programs today as part of the 350 billion naira additional release, which will take our total capital spend over 700 billion. We are raising money. As you know, the Eurobond capital raise is on. We're about to appoint our advisors, so we'll be raising an additional $1 billion. 2 weeks ago, we approved the external borrowing plan. That was very important because if you remember when we said we would borrow, we said we would borrow the cheapest money first. We have approvals in that plan from the World Bank, from ADB, from GCA, with interest rates as low as 1.5% and tenures as long as 40 years to intervene in some specific areas, which include agriculture, education, health, rebuilding of the Northeast, and there are a lot of, and of course the railway projects that are very key to what we're doing.
The finance minister also assured that the Nigerian government is doing all it can to move the country away from recession. Nigeria was Africa's largest economy and its top oil producer, but its public finances have suffered as the price of crude oil dropped around the world. Official data from the country's Bureau of Statistics show that its gross domestic product contracted by 2.06% in the second quarter, sending Africa's biggest economy into recession after a decline in the first quarter. Adeosun explained that there was a strategic plan by the administration to see that the recession ended very soon and also ensure that the economy recovered fully.
I want to just re-emphasize that we have a strategic plan that will take us out of the recession that we found ourselves in. We want to make sure this recession is as short as possible. We don't want a prolonged recession. From what we're looking at, we don't think it will be a prolonged recession. We think that some of the initiatives that we have been working on will now begin to bear fruit. And what are those initiatives? I've talked about the investment already, but there are also initiatives which I've shared with those of you who come to the FAC meeting around getting out of cash calls. That's very, very fundamental to the economy. And let me give you the impact of that. This month, for example, in fact, we only got 41 billion from oil. they had to use 110 billion to fund cash calls. If we had that money, we could have pumped that money out into the economy. We are working with the Ministry of Petroleum Resources and NNPC to get out of the cash calls. That's the long-term plan, to allow those joint ventures to borrow money that they need rather than taking money from the Federation account. And that will improve the money in circulation. We've also done a lot of work with the subnational governments, that's the state governments, around the budget support plan. As you know, many of them had not been paying salaries for months. We've now been able to support them with additional money every month in the FAC account, and many of them have now resumed paying salaries. We are monitoring, because one of the conditions of the loan, the facility was conditional, was that they meet certain conditions, and we're now sending the monitoring and evaluation out to go and check that they're actually doing what they agreed and undertook to do. But we are pleased to report that many more, and we do monitor through the unions, are paying salaries, and that's also going to have a huge effect on demand and help to get the economy moving. So in a nutshell, that's it. We are on course. We're confident that the plan we've put together will work, and it's a long-term plan that will reposition the economy and make sure that we don't go into these boom and bust cycles that are driven by the oil price.
The Sultan of Sokoto, Abubakar Saad, wants Nigerian doctors to always seek other alternatives to resolving their disputes with the government rather than resorting to strike actions, which he says usually cause the nation more harm than good. He was speaking at the 34th annual convocation ceremony of the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria in Lagos. Our correspondent, Abiola Ismail, now reports.
At kilometer 26,
it's another call to service for these new fellows of the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria. They have spent between 4 to 7 years acquiring knowledge on saving lives in the classroom. One by one, they file out to receive their certificate as fellows of the college. Speakers after speakers mined no walls, advising these graduates to see strike as an enemy to the nation building. In his word, the Sultan of Sokoto, Abubakar Saad, re-echoed his advocacy on the need to champion a new cause rather than resorting to strike as a means of getting government's attention.
I think it's very important. We must love ourselves first before any other thing. Because God gave you a neighbor. You didn't give yourself a neighbor. Where you find yourself is just your own, you think it's your plan, but that's God's plan. I think we have to love ourselves more. So I want to urge all of you, close ranks. Let's come together.
The guest lecturer at the occasion, Dr. Benedictus Ajayi, wants doctors to continuously ask themselves the question, what kind of doctor are you? He believes, with this in mind of every patriotic and medical practitioners, the call to embark on strike will not be given a second thought.
doctors must learn the art of communication and lobbying. Must learn how to win friends and influence people. We have sworn to preserve, not to destroy life. Strikes maim and kill our patients. Strikes kill our initiatives and dull our intellects and skills and make our patients, who should be our allies, our foes.
Other speakers led by the president of the college, Professor Demola Olaito, say no nation can develop with incessant strike, especially in the health sector. They said dialogue remained the best option, as this will help to reduce the cases of death, loss of manpower and time.
Work stoppages are not very good. We frown at it because, number one, if you are supposed to work somewhere, you need 3 months to gain an experience. If you go on strike, maybe even for just 3 weeks, the experience you are supposed to gain, you can't get it. So we frown totally at strike, and we believe that dialogue is more important than strike.
There's room for dialogue, advocacy, making the government understand your issues. Sometimes you get 100%, sometimes you get less than 100%. And this applies not only to doctors, to all health workers. It has become unacceptable for the Nigerian doctors and health workers to be closing our hospitals to fellow Nigerians. Why do you want them to go?
The newly inducted fellows were urged to make a difference in their chosen careers and make positive change happen. Abiola Ismail, TV360 Lagos.
4 companies involved in a money laundering case linked to former First Lady Patience Jonathan have pleaded guilty before a federal high court in Lagos. The companies on Thursday pleaded guilty to the offense of laundering $15 million before a federal high court sitting in the southwest region. The companies are Pluto Property and Investment Company Limited, Seagate Property Development and Investment Company Limited, Transocean Property and Investment Company Limited, and Avalon Global Property and Development Company Limited. Aside from the companies also charged by the EFCC as the former aide to ex-President Goodluck Jonathan, a lawyer Amajoyi Azubike, a banker Demola Bolo Odeku. While the companies pleaded guilty to the charges, the former presidential aide, the lawyer and banker all pleaded not guilty to a 15-count amended charge. Meanwhile, the former First Lady has now reacted to the recent development. She's accusing the EFCC of hiring mercenaries to testify against her. She also alleged that the EFCC presented 4 unknown persons who were not authorized by the company's board to plead guilty on behalf of the companies. According to her, it was a ploy by the EFCC to ensure that her money was confiscated. The Nigerian Navy says it has raided and destroyed illegal refineries in the Niger Delta region. It says the operation was carried out in continuation of the Chief of the Naval Staff's campaign tagged Operation Zero Crude Oil Theft. During the raids, the team arrested 11 suspects and destroyed 13 boats laden with suspected stolen crude oil. The recent violence in the Niger Delta region has raised concern that militants might resume an insurgency that has been quiet for the past several years. The United Kingdom State Prosecution Agency has said the conviction of former Delta State Governor James Ibori remains valid. This comes despite evidence a British police officer took bribes during the investigation of his case. Ibori is serving a 13-year sentence in a British prison after pleading guilty in 2012 to 10 counts of fraud and money laundering. The case has become an embarrassment for UK since one of Ibori's associates, convicted money launderer Badresh Gohil, alleged that the presidential process was tainted because prosecutors had covered up evidence of police corruption. The United Nations has unveiled plans to set up 2 aviation security training schools here in Nigeria as part of measures to support the nation's overall counterterrorism efforts. The move would also assist in providing a robust national aviation security policy that will mitigate the threat posed to civil aviation by terrorist organizations and their operatives. The development was confirmed by a statement from the Ministry of Aviation. The statement also said the establishment of the aviation training schools in Nigeria is in line with the federal government's vision towards turning around the aviation sector to meet global standards in infrastructure, safety, and security. President Muhammadu Buhari has advised local governments to produce a bill that would make them free from control of state governments. Speaking on Thursday when he hosted officials of the Association of Local Governments in Nigeria, ALGON, at the presidential villa in Abuja, President Buhari said the freedom of local governments from the strongholds of state governments would better the lot of Nigerians at the community level. He described the frosty relationship between state and local governments as, quote, a very serious constitutional problem, and of quote, saying a constitutional amendment was urgently needed to address the issue. Ahead of the Ondo gubernatorial polls, 2 factions of the People's Democratic Party have submitted 2 different names as candidates in the race to replace Governor Olusegun Mimiko. The 2 groups' National Caretaker Committee of the PDP headed by Senator Ahmed McCarthy, while the other one is a faction led by Senator Ali Modu Sheriff. The elections are slated to hold in November this year. Time for a quick break. When we'll come back, we'll look at sports and international stories. Don't go away.
Corruption not in my country.
How work?
Oh, correct, Oga.
What is it that you are doing?
Oga, they come out the part now. Make we go sell for.
Oga, na correct kuzabi this so. Oga Titus and him boys them. They do am. They will come out the original parts, sell them, make plenty kusa. No wonder our customers bring the generator back to our workshop because they bad. And not because of stuff. Now because they overuse the generator. Plus say NEPA no they give them electricity. Before I open my eye, Makachuku, look at my dog in the heaven. Replace this original generator parts back inside this generator of my customer. In short, before una do am, frog jump. One, frog jump. 1, 2, 1. Stealing of generator parts or changing of original parts to a fake one. That is the corruption. Not in my country.
Corruption not in my country. Corruption not in my country.
Hello? Yeah, I found your wallet in front of a supermarket. Meet me at Apple Junction. Yes, I'll be waiting for you.
Now we find out. Two of us.
Thank you very much, officer. You know, it's surprising that men like you still exist in the police force.
Yes, so...
Oh, yes.
This is just a token of my appreciation.
Oh, no, you don't need to do this. We're only doing our job.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
You're welcome.
Now I know police is really my friend.
Yes.
Friend. Hey. Okay, which came up with this one? I don't understand.
You know your problem. You are greedy. I'm a policeman who is doing his job. All forms of corruption in the force, not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
Glad to have you back. Nigeria's currency, the Naira, is expected to remain stable around the present level at both official interbank and parallel markets. This comes as demand from holidaymakers slow down and the Central Bank of Nigeria upped its support for the local currency at the official window. The Naira this week firmed a little at the parallel market to $4.23 a dollar from $4.25 to the dollar last week. The Naira has been under a persistent pressure as dollar scarcity continues to weigh on the local currency at both the parallel and interbank forex markets. However, traders said dollar supply had improved in the past few days. Oil prices fell on Friday on worries that returning Libyan and Nigerian exports would stoke a global supply glut. Brent crude futures were trading at $46.20 per barrel, while U.S. crude was down at $43.55 per barrel. Libya is resuming oil exports from some of its main ports, with forces loyal to Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar, while ExxonMobil in Nigeria has a pipeline operated to export Nigeria's Kwa Ibo crude oil, with the first cargo expected to load as early as the end of September. UN Human Rights Commission says it is concerned by intimidation of the civil society activists, harassment of journalists, sexual violence and other right abuses in South Sudan. Officials from the UN Commission on Human Rights in South Sudan were speaking at a news conference in Juba. It comes a day after the editor of a prominent newspaper in the 5-year-old nation said his publication had been shut down by the authorities. Fighting erupted in South Sudan at the end of 2013 between soldiers loyal to President Salva Kiir and those backing his former vice president, Riek Machar. A peace deal signed in 2015 proved shaky and fresh clashes flared again in the capital of Juba. Now Machar has since left the country to avoid more violence. Libyan patrols intercepted some 1,425 migrants trying to cross the Mediterranean to Europe over the past 2 days. A naval spokesman, Ayub Kasim, on Friday said about 1,000 migrants on 7 inflatable boats were turned back early on Wednesday. Most of them were from sub-Saharan African countries, and about 1/3 were women and children. Most migrants trying to reach Europe by boat across the central Mediterranean head for Italy from Libya, where years of political turmoil and armed conflict have allowed migrant smuggling networks to flourish. More than 120,000 migrants have arrived in Italy by boat so far this year, a slight increase over 2015. This is according to the International Organization for Migration. South African prosecutors say they will launch another appeal against a 6-year prison sentence given to former Olympian Oscar Pistorius for the murder of his former girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp. The prosecutors had earlier filed an appeal against the sentencing because they believe the 6-year sentence was, quote, and injustice and has the potential to bring the administration of justice into disrepute, end of quote. The minimum sentence for his offense was 15 years, but the judge presiding over his case, Tokozile Masipa, approved a lesser sentence. However, the same judge denied their appeal for a longer sentence. In a fresh statement on Friday, the prosecutors said they have now taken their appeal to the Supreme Court. Pistorius was originally sentenced to 5 years imprisonment after he was found guilty of culpable homicide. During the trial, he said he shot his girlfriend River Steenkamp through a locked bathroom door because he mistook her for an intruder. A total of 6 Heartland Football Club players have been ruled out of action for an undisclosed period following a road accident on Wednesday. The players were on their way to a rescheduled Nigerian Professional Premier League clash against El Kanami Warriors in Maiduguri. The players who were all involved in the accident are Chinedu Efu, Mark Marcel Obioha, Kingsley Ajeru, Owusu Chidebere Ajoku, and Ebele Obi. X-ray reports show the conditions of the first 5 players appear to be much better than that of the 6th player. France Football magazine has announced that it has ended its partnership deal with World Football governing body FIFA on the Ballon d'Or award. The award, created in 2010, is usually awarded to the world's best players as voted by journalists, managers and captains of various national football teams. It had replaced the FIFA World Player of the Year and the European Footballer of the Year award. Now FIFA must decide whether they will revive the defunct FIFA World Player of the Year award. France Football says they will announce the final changes on Tuesday, September 20th, 2016. Well, that's all we have on news now. Thank you very much for watching. I am Thelma Okoro.